Jill!
Brad!
We've gotta... Jill! Help!
No! Brad?
Hello there YouTubers. In this video I will be doing a bullet count for each weapon on Nemesis and each of his encounters in the main game, as well as the few areas he appears in the Mercenaries mode. The encounters aren't in any particular order, nor the weapons used on him. That being said, since this is the first encounter in the game, I thought it would be fitting to use the first weapon in the game, which is the M92F handgun. While that's going on, I will be giving my overall thoughts on Resident Evil 3, so with that in mind, I don't know where to start with this. Nemesis is my favorite enemy to fight in Resident Evil. He seems like a mixture between Tyrant from RE1 and Mr. X from RE2. There's about 11 encounters with Nemesis in RE3, but I won't be fighting Nemesis in his second and third form, mainly because it takes more ammo to beat him than in his first form. Instead, I will only be fighting him in his first form in each of the areas he appears in the game. Oh, and I won't be fighting Nemesis in the 6th encounter, because that battle in particular is more of a half battle. By which I mean, if you knock him down once, you're pretty much done with that fight. Not really worth the ammunition if you ask me. Of course, it's optional to fight Nemesis, just like most of the encounters you'll see in this video. 8 of the 11 encounters are optional, 7 of which give you items for defeating Nemesis. Despite it being optional though, I think this encounter is a good example of poor balancing as far as difficulty goes, because while you might think that the first major fight would be the easiest in any given game, this is actually one of the harder fights with Nemesis, mostly because you don't have a whole lot of weaponry, let alone ammo to fight Nemesis with. The difficulty won't ramp up this high again until the 5th encounter of the game. I'm making it look easy right now, but don't be fooled. I've actually died a few times here trying to count handgun bullets needed to beat Nemesis in this encounter. There are going to be some encounters that will be repeated just so you can see every type of ammo used to beat Nemesis. This encounter is the only one where I can consistently beat Nemesis with the handgun. I could technically beat Nemesis with a knife if I had plenty of recovery items. And there were a couple times where I used all my possible shotgun shells in this fight, and Nemesis was still standing. You might be lucky and beat him with the shotgun here, but I personally wouldn't recommend it until the 2nd encounter, which you'll see in a couple minutes. Now, I do sort of admit I shouldn't have played this game as a kid, not only because it's an M-rated title, but because of how hard this game is, even if you play it on easy. This game is being played on hard mode, as some weapons can only be used in hard mode, such as the 2 weapons you get from defeating Nemesis 5 times in the main game, and the mine thrower that you get way late in the game. Anyway, playing this game on a few fresh playthroughs, it felt so rewarding to be able to beat RE3 on hard and get the highest rank. It's even possible to defeat Nemesis in each encounter and still walk away with an A rank. While I know I can often walk away with an A rank nowadays, I certainly could not have done it on my first few playthroughs. 1, because I didn't know where to go first, and 2, I'd use about 30 ink ribbons as I didn't know when I'd be able to fight Nemesis again. The first 2 Nemesis fights gives you parts of the Eagle 6.0, which is more or less the better handgun, but I won't be showing it for a few more fights. So for now, let's talk about the other times where Nemesis shows up, but sometimes he'll be carrying his own rocket launcher. I think these encounters are slightly easier because it usually involves dodging his rockets from a distance and firing at him before he starts running after you again. Unlike the Resident Evil 3 remake where he seems to carry an infinite amount of rockets, once he fires 5 rockets here, he'll ditch the rocket launcher and start beating on you again. So it's best to use his rocket aiming ability to your advantage while you can. During my second playthrough, I decided to save the powders to make some more shotgun shells, which is more than enough, especially since in this room I often find the first shotgun shells here. The powders that I find could be used to create various types of ammo, Until I get the grenade launcher here at the police station or at the power plant later, I usually tend to use the first few powders to make handgun bullets and shotgun shells for the first two weapons. After the police station though, I tend to collect and save powders to mix with regular grenade rounds that I will be picking up later sometime after the third Nemesis encounter. A minute ago, I mentioned I used every possible shotgun shell on Nemesis in the first encounter. If you've collected and saved all the powders up to the first encounter, you should have a total of 27 shotgun shells. At times, he'll take between 28 to 30 shells before going down. My guess is that he has to be up close to you as possible for the shots to be more damaging, and therefore you use less shots to take him down. As useful as it is to make more bullets, I think it's pretty wasteful to create just shotgun shells and handgun bullets. You do get enhanced bullets the more you use the reload tool with the powders, making both the handgun and shotgun more powerful with some great stopping power. But unless you plan to do a minimalist run where you never use an item box throughout your run to put items away for later use, you're better off just using the powders to mix with the grenade rounds, or better yet, use the reloading tool to make magnum bullets. When it comes to the third encounter, either at the diner or newspaper office, I won't be having Carlos help me fight with Nemesis, not only because it's in the spirit of a challenge, but him firing at Nemesis while I'm firing at Nemesis kinda throws off the necessary ammo count. At times, I've tried letting Carlos fight Nemesis while I take all the abuse from him, but Nemesis would either kill me or kill Carlos. And since the concept of healing your teammate didn't come to light until RE5, I couldn't just run up to Carlos long enough to heal him up for round 2 and round 3. Anyway, just to add some variety to the Nemesis encounters, I went ahead and used each of the Umbrella mercenaries and picked the best locations to fight Nemesis. Honestly, it was tough getting Carlos here to fight Nemesis because I had to make sure to have at least 2 recovery items and not use the assault rifle until I got here. I could have used the unlimited assault rifle in the main game, like how I did with the Gatling gun, but it would be time consuming to count every bullet that hits Nemesis. Easy mode also gives you the assault rifle and with some clips to go with it, but all enemies including Nemesis has less health than on hard mode, again throwing off the necessary ammo count. Technically, you can still use the assault rifle in the main game during the first playthrough on hard mode, but unfortunately this comes way late in the game and only has one fully loaded clip inside, after you defeated Nemesis 6 times in his first form, and in the 8th time when he's in his second form. I would say it's almost never worth it, but at least it'll save on bullets, grenade rounds, and powders until you reach the last map area of RE3. You don't even get this weapon on subsequent playthroughs, presumably because you may have unlocked the unlimited assault rifle after a few playthroughs in the mercenaries mode. Unlike most other weapons, the ammo counter is shown in percentages rather than telling you how much bullets is left in your assault rifle. Before coming here to fight for real, I've counted each bullet per percent, and it seems to carry up to 400 bullets. It's funny because while this weapon pretty much stops most other enemies in their tracks, Nemesis will continue to walk and run towards you. Instead of having an extra recovery item, I think I could have killed a bit more enemies if I started with an extra clip, or have one of the people I rescue give me an extra clip. As it stands, Carlos is my least favorite of the UBCS, at least in the mercenaries mode. Nikolai and Mikhail have some flaws of their own, but playing as Carlos was the biggest pain to play just for this one part of the video. One of the benefits of mixing different powders with regular grenade rounds is if you have a full stack, you can turn those 6 regular grenade rounds into 18 more powerful grenade rounds, such as flame rounds, acid rounds, and freeze rounds. Hopefully, by the time you encounter Nemesis for the 4th time, you should have collected plenty of powders to do so. I would say you should have found regular grenade rounds too, but depending on what weapon you get at the police station first, you may or may not get the grenade launcher right away. If you ask me, I think it's more beneficial to get the grenade launcher first, since you should have some powders to make grenade rounds. In that little alleyway before you meet Brad Vickers, there are some grenade rounds hidden away, but unless you can glitch your way into getting them, you'll have to wait until you put out the fire to get the crank to open the shutter that hides the grenade rounds. It's kind of a waste to mix certain powders together in order to get certain grenade rounds, even just regular grenade rounds at that. It's more wasteful fighting Nemesis with those regular grenade rounds, mainly because they're not quite as powerful as the flame rounds or freeze rounds. Which means you'll be using more grenade rounds than you would either the flame rounds or freeze rounds. Using the plain blue powders with the reloading tool will give you up to 10 regular grenade rounds each. But if you were to find and save those regular grenade rounds along with every possible powder, I'd say you have enough powerful grenade rounds to fight the first 5 Nemesis encounters at least 3 times over. Even if you have 24 regular rounds after mixing all the powders you've collected, I wouldn't bother wasting them on Nemesis, especially when you've got more powerful rounds to use on him instead. When it comes to using either the grenade launcher or the rocket launcher, there's a pretty good chance Nemesis will dodge your shots if you're far enough away. I didn't think about it until after recording, but it might have been better if I just fired one shot at a time instead of just standing there, firing shots until I'm grabbed by Nemesis. Hopefully if you decide to give RE3 on PlayStation a shot for the first time, you'll take my advice to heart, even if I myself didn't learn from my mistakes until after making this ammo count video come to be. This fight took a bit longer than I wanted, but for the sake of doing the ammo count on Nemesis, I just had to put up with it. Because Nemesis is smart enough to dodge a couple of my rounds, I've ended up using more rounds than was actually needed to defeat Nemesis, making this encounter one of my least favorite fights in this video. And now that I've gotten the regular bullets, shells, and rounds out of the way, I'd say we're about a quarter of the way from using all possible weapons and ammo types on Nemesis. After beating Nemesis twice in the main game, you've earned both parts for the better handgun, known as the Eagle 6.0. Unlike the M9 2F handgun, this weapon fires fairly rapidly with a chance of landing a critical shot, which is about as powerful as a Magnum shot. As nice as it is to use this weapon, I've pretty much stopped using it when there is no more handgun bullets to pick up in the game. Of course, you have the option to create more handgun bullets using the powders with the reloading tool, but this is assuming if you're going to go for a minimalist run where you never use the item box. It would be a pretty fun challenge to tackle, but I'm not sure I'd want to attempt it for a good while, even if I didn't do an ammo count for this video. I can definitely tell you that the mandatory fights with Nemesis would have posed a serious problem. Anyway, this is by far the better weapon to have, at least until you're ready to head towards the clock tower halfway through the game. If you plan your ammo shots carefully, it is possible to beat Nemesis in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th encounters. There are other encounters in the Mercenaries mode where the Eagle handgun could be used, but I've already explained the trouble it was to use Carlos in that mode. One minor issue I do have with this handgun is that you can't use the enhanced handgun bullets with the Eagle handgun, presumably because it would be game-breakingly overpowered at that point. Where instead of getting 1 out of 6 shots, which would land a critical shot, it would most likely one-hit kill almost any enemy that comes your way, and the bullet count to beat Nemesis would probably be about 2/3 of what you saw here. So when it comes down to it, you have a choice to use either the weak but faster handgun, or the slow but stronger handgun using some enhanced. And speaking of which, I decided to use Nikolai to do this fight with Nemesis here in the Mercenaries mode. I actually found it more fun to attempt the ammo count here than I did with Carlos, although the second person I needed to save in order to get the enhanced handgun bullets kinda tripped me up a couple times, as I wanted to have 2 aid sprays to fight Nemesis here. Of course I only used 1 in this battle here, but I wanted to be on the safe side and have an extra one just in case. Now, I could have went on ahead and made some enhanced handgun bullets in the main game, as the earliest I could use them is during the 3rd Nemesis encounter. But again, I wanted to include the areas in the Mercenaries mode to add some variety in the Nemesis fights. Plus, this was kind of faster to get my hands on some enhanced handgun bullets anyway, despite needing to retry playing the Mercenaries mode as Nikolai 3 times, which roughly took me 20 minutes in the Mercenaries mode compared to at least 35 minutes spent playing the main game, where I had to backtrack to pick up some powders to make the enhanced handgun bullets. So here we are. These bullets practically stop Nemesis from charging towards you, making it a little easier to avoid his punches and grabs. It might even make some of the later fights in the main game easier to get some of the items Nemesis drops, but that's assuming if you're planning to do a minimalist run in the main game. Plus, I think by the time you actually do get the option to make enhanced handgun bullets, you should have the grenade launcher with some grenade rounds to mix with the powders that you'll come across sometime after the third Nemesis encounter, and would rather make powerful rounds instead of enhanced handgun bullets. As I said a while ago, I think it's much more beneficial to get the grenade launcher here at the police station than at the power plant, since you might have a few powders saved up to make some grenade rounds early on. Unfortunately, there's no way to know ahead of time what weapon you'll be getting, as it's a 50-50 chance of picking up the grenade launcher before later getting the Magnum. You can use the red powders and one yellow powder to make some flame rounds, but those powders might be wasted if you end up getting the Magnum first. That being said, the earliest encounter to use the grenade launcher with either the regular rounds or flame rounds against Nemesis is here inside the police station. And luck just happened to be on my side during the second playthrough of the game. To be fair, items being swapped around in different locations is a good way to plan out the best course of action depending on the situation, and the police station is a good example of that. If the shotgun shells appeared in this room, you wouldn't need to go into the room where your STARS badge is, but there might be red herbs in that hallway with either zombies or dogs guarding them. Likewise, after the third Nemesis encounter, the 3 red powders and 3 yellow powders can either all be at the storage building behind the fire, or the red can be at the gas station and the yellows can be at the power station.
How did he find me?
Kinda goes a long way in making players work out the better decisions on what weapons to use on all enemies, including Nemesis. But by the 8th playthrough of the game, you should already know that. If you happen to get the Magnum at the police station, you should be able to have enough powders to create 1 stack of Magnum bullets, just in time for the third Nemesis encounter. The Magnum itself is a very powerful weapon, but I don't really think it's worth burning so many powders just for a weapon that one hit kills all enemies, except for Nemesis of course. Don't misunderstand me, I find this weapon to be pretty useful against hunters and drained demos, but because those enemies appear only a handful of times in the game, it's better to use the powders on regular grenade rounds instead. Alternatively, you could just play through the game on easy mode and use only the Magnum, as any ammo you find or make is double than what you get on hard. So instead of getting a stack of 24 bullets for the Magnum, you'd be getting 48 bullets using the powders and reloading tool. You might hit a difficulty spike at the beginning, as you'd only have 30 Magnum shots in total, and it still takes 3 combined blue powders to make Magnum bullets. But once you start fighting powders all over the place, especially if you know where they all are, you'll have more than enough Magnum ammo to finish the game on easy mode, especially with the fact that Nemesis himself takes less ammo to beat than he would on hard mode. If you ask me what my favorite weapon to use in RE3 is, it would hands down be the grenade launcher with the freeze rounds. If you were to save all your powders and regular rounds up to the 8th Nemesis encounter, I would say you'll have more than enough to beat Nemesis and the rest of the encounters of RE3. Quick reminder, I'm not going to show off the fights in his second and third form, as they take more ammo than in his first form. Anyway, because of this particular encounter, I thought I'd use my favorite grenade rounds here. You also get some from Carlos if you jump off the train that brings you to the clock tower. In a sense, they're pretty overpowered, beaten only by the rocket launcher in that regard. It's another reason why it's more beneficial than the Magnum. You can make more freeze rounds with the powders that you find, and you don't use as much to beat Nemesis. Of course, that's assuming you don't miss every few shots or so. Might even be perfect for a minimalist run. I promise I'll let that particular subject rest for the remainder of the video, but the idea does seem like a fun challenge. I may decide to give it a try myself sometime. Just not right now, as I have other video games to tackle for the time being. It's been about 20 minutes in this video, and we're already halfway done with the ammo count in this video, guys. And now that I've shown you my most favorite weapon, it's time you saw my least favorite weapon to use. Not just in Resident Evil 3, but pretty much every Resident Evil game I've played since I've beaten Resident Evil 3. Oh boy. Not sure if you guys would see this as being somewhat misleading, as this is a ammo count video, and the knife, needless to say, is the only weapon that doesn't use ammo. You might say the same about the unlimited Gatling gun, but since that's something you have to earn after beating RE3 once, I'm counting that as a different matter, as I still try to count how many bullets go into Nemesis later in the video. Because I don't really have too much to say about my experience using the knife on Nemesis, other than using this trick in a minute that I recently learned, which not only saved me on some time, but also on recovery items, I figured this is the time to talk about using the knife on some broader subjects. I haven't really enjoyed using the knife in any Resident Evil game, especially when there's other weapons I'd rather be using instead, even if it's just to challenge myself. I know it has its uses in RE4, 5, and 6, and I think in the Revolutions games, but to use it in combat against most enemies like the reusable zombies is a bad idea. I've seen people go through runs using just a knife, and kudos to them for beating that challenge, but honestly I'd say that anyone who plays the game with just the knife is being thick and pretty much letting the ammo go to waste. If there was a mode like that, I'd imagine that any weapons and ammo you find would either be removed or just replaced with recovery items, as I'm sure that even looking at walkthroughs, you're going to take on a lot of damage. Admittedly, during my first recent playthrough in a long time, I did use the knife to save on handgun bullets, but up to the second save room before you encounter Nemesis for the first time, I pretty much ditched the knife as I no longer had any use for it. Playing the remaster RE1 and the remakes of RE2 and 3 didn't change my views on the knife either, although trying to get the achievement on RE1, which requires you to use the knife only, was the only challenge that was worth trying once. And I imagine trying to beat either Mr. X or Nemesis with the knife in the remakes would be a hellish nightmare if it were one of the achievements. The knife still proves to be useful in opening crates to get more ammo and recovery items, but the remakes present a problem that discourages me from using it more than necessary. The knife in RE2 gets more duller with each use until it breaks, and in RE3 the knife can't protect you from being attacked if you're grabbed like it did in RE2. That being said, if not for this challenge, I would have just preferred playing through the game with more or less the same strategy, using the knife at the beginning up until the second save room of RE3. I did try to fight Nemesis with the knife during the first encounter, but unfortunately I've ended up being mutilated far too many times to care if I could beat the Nemesis with the knife or not. At least with the handgun or shotgun, I could win the first battle with only 1 or 2 recovery items there. And no, I refuse to fight Nemesis with Nikolai's knife in the Mercenaries mode. If you guys find this boring to see me try to kill Nemesis cheaply with the knife during the 4th encounter, then maybe that's the excuse you need to use the knife as little as possible in the game. Good lord, this is without a doubt the longest Nemesis fight I've done in this video, and with the use of the handgun being a very close second. But thanks to this cheap trick and less than 100 slashes, I am so glad that it's over now, never to be spoken of again, and we can finally move on to the next weapon to use on Nemesis, and in a different location during the 4th encounter. I'm sure a lot of people watching this video will disagree with me, but if there's one thing I'm glad the RE3 remake left out from this game, it's the life choice sections. I get that this was a decent way to add replay value, as you wouldn't know what would happen based on your decisions during your first playthrough, and you might want to see all of them once out of curiosity to see what would happen next. But after the 3rd playthrough, there's just no reason to pick certain life choices, and most of them involve Nemesis. If you ask me, this particular life section choice seems like a beginner's trap because there's a good chance that you won't be prepared to fight with Nemesis if you choose to head for the emergency exit. Having said that, there were yellow powders that appeared 50% of the time at the power station, and for this battle I used them to make the acid rounds. Although they are twice as powerful as regular rounds, I feel it's kind of wasteful to fry yellow powders to make acid rounds, especially with the fact that there is less yellow powders than there are red powders in the game. In fact, during the first half of the game, before you head for the clock tower, I counted 12 red powders and 9 yellow powders. I can only assume there is more red powders to experiment and make more favorable ammo, such as mixing 2 reds with 1 yellow to get shotgun shells, mixing 3 reds with a stack of regular rounds to get flame rounds, using 7 single red powders before getting the option to make enhanced handgun bullets. You get the idea. Another reason why I don't make acid rounds is because they're not that much useful against most enemies, except for the hunters and gravedigger. Plus it takes more acid rounds to defeat Nemesis than it would flame rounds or freeze rounds. I guess because Carlos never gave you any acid rounds throughout the game, only the flame rounds and freeze rounds, it kinda serves as a hint that they're not so good. As it stands, I pretty much wasted 3 yellow powders on weaker ammo, rather than better ammo for a different weapon in RE3. And speaking of which, unlike the enhanced handgun bullets that I can quickly get in the Mercenaries mode, I don't get nearly enough when I play as Mikhail, and those come near at the end of the Mercenaries mode. So I pretty much had to save my yellow powders to make enhanced shotgun shells, and because I had to use 7 single yellows to make some regular shotgun shells, that is needed later anyway, I pretty much had to wait until this encounter in the game before I could do a bullet count for the strong shotgun shells. As I said earlier in this video, this encounter, along with the first, are some of the more difficult fights against Nemesis. Even though you may have more weapons to use by this point, the tight path makes it hard to run around Nemesis should you choose to fight him. It's just too tough for a first try, and believe it or not, this was the first time I actually died at the hands of Nemesis. Similar to the assault rifle, the enhanced shotgun shells has a lot of stopping power for almost all enemies, and it kinda slows down Nemesis somewhat. Although I pretty much have to use all my yellow powders in the first half of the game, I do tend to go through every other playthrough using enhanced shotgun shells, along with mostly flame rounds, as I gotta put the other red powders to some use. Depending on if you choose to fight Nemesis to pick up all items he drops, you may want to hold off on making enhanced shotgun shells, as the 4th and 5th defeats of Nemesis will give you a better shotgun, similar to the Eagle handgun. But I'll talk a bit more about it after this next short battle with Nemesis.
It's him!
One of the optional weapons to unlock after clearing the Mercenaries mode enough times is the unlimited Gatling gun. This weapon is so overpowered you can do a whole playthrough with it. This weapon can clear a path of any group of monsters in seconds, and you can even take on Nemesis in almost every encounter in the game. If he happens to have the rocket launcher, he'll miss most, if not all of his rockets if you keep firing on him. The only drawback I do have with this Gatling gun is that it leaves you vulnerable for about 2 seconds, meaning there's a chance you could get attacked before you start unloading bullets into enemies. So you better make sure that you're in a safe spot before using the Gatling gun, especially if you use it up against Nemesis. Similar to how items and enemies are swapped around in different locations on different playthroughs, I think it would have been great if the same applied to the items Nemesis dropped. Meaning you could either get parts to the Western Custom Shotgun first, replace one of the 8 spray boxes with the assault rifle or Gatling gun with its own limited ammo, etc. Especially if you choose to skip an encounter or 2 on different playthroughs of the game. As it stands, for me to use the Western Custom Shotgun as early as I can, I have to beat Nemesis, or at least down him, 5 times before coming to the clock tower. On the other hand, the shotgun is so powerful, it might save you the trouble of burning through yellow powders just to get more powerful shots. Having experimented with both the regular shotgun with enhanced shells and the Western Custom Shotgun, I can't tell which is better. Both take out groups of zombies in 2 or 3 shots, both fire at about the same speed, and both take their sweet time to reload if your shotgun runs out of shells. I guess one major advantage the enhanced shells have is that you can get them before the 5th Nemesis encounter, whereas you get the Western Custom shotgun after beating Nemesis 5 times in a row. Then again, you might not use the yellow powders by the time you get the option to get the enhanced shotgun shells before coming to the clock tower. Whether you guys choose to make enhanced shotgun shells for the rest of the playthrough, or get the Western Custom shotgun without using too many yellow powders by themselves, this encounter is the earliest I could use the Western Custom shotgun against Nemesis. I could have also used it on the way to the clock tower since it's technically the 6th encounter, but that battle is only half a fight. Again, not worth the ammo. If you guys are worried about your remaining ammo count and still want to collect all the items Nemesis drops, you may be interested to know that you can still down Nemesis and walk away without fighting him during the 3rd encounter and this encounter. I'll leave that for another puzzle for you guys to work out if you're feeling brave enough to try next time you play Resident Evil 3 again. It's funny how each Nemesis encounter feels unique and in some ways fun to fight him, but then you come across a moment like this in the Mercenaries mode where there are 2 Nemesis at the same time for no reason. I think it goes a bit too far because his AI difficulty is broken in this game. Doing an accurate ammo count here with either Carlos or Nikolai would have been impossible, since there's a good chance they'll accidentally attack each other or kill you before you have the chance to do a bullet count. With Mikhail, it was easy killing both of them since the ammo count is the same for both. If you wanted to have all of your weapons unlimited in the main game, you're better off using Mikhail to unlock it much faster. Unfortunately for this last weapon in the main game, I had to make it unlimited to do an accurate ammo count here. There's not enough ammo for the mine thrower to defeat Nemesis. I did use all of the mines I could find before this battle, and I had just enough to down Nemesis once. There's a little quirk that for some reason makes the mines into homing darts that explode if unlimited. Personally, I would have preferred if they just exploded on impact like grenade rounds or rockets. And with that homing feature, Nemesis won't be able to dodge it. I think this weapon should have been cut since you don't find much ammo, plus it's nothing too special without making it unlimited. On a final note, it's kind of a shame Nemesis didn't make any more appearances in the Resident Evil storyline to go after the other former members of STARS. Chris Redfield has been in plenty of Resident Evil games, some where he and Jill worked together. It would have been interesting to see Chris with his boulder punching skills to fight Nemesis at some point. Even Barry Burton gets a chance to be playable in an RE title, so it could have been fun to use his special magnum to keep Nemesis at bay. Granted, Chris and Barry wouldn't do much better than Jill did in this game, but I think it was a missed opportunity. Anyway, this was fun counting every type of ammo needed to beat Nemesis in RE3. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing this video. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Game on!
We're saved.